When You Are Old is very much a poem from Yeats's early phase. It shows the influence of the romantic strain of the so-called Pre-Raphaelite movement. It shows a kind of lyricism that would stay with him throughout his life, but come into several different characterizations, several different iterations. And it also shows, I think, the temperament of a young man who has had his heart broken for probably the very first time. Historically, biographically, he writes this after having been turned down by the great love of his life, this woman named Maud Gonne, who was an active nationalist revolutionary, and with whom he had this fractious, long-standing relationship. But he fell deeply in love with her when he was a young man, and she turned him down, and this poem comes shortly after that. And you can see it is, in one sense, a poem about heartbreak. But the relationship between the expression of that heartbreak and the way he goes about it, the form and the content of this poem, the relationship between that, I find really, really fractious in one sense, but also really fascinating. So just take a look at it. It's a very regular rhyme. It's a very sing-songy little sound to it. It is a simple, discrete 3-stanza poem with a very regular meter. It's a nice poem, and you can read that and just say, "Oh, it's a nice poem," and it has this cozy feel to it. And it's only when you peel back that cozy feel that you start to sense, well, okay, that cozy feel is kind of masking something. And that is your entry into just about everything that he was going to go on to write from there. When you are old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true, but one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur, a little sadly, how love fled, and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a cloud of stars. Now, there's some beautiful lyricism going on here, some beautiful imagery, some beautiful sounds. There's such a nice flow to it, and it has that cozy image at the start of the fireplace, the old woman standing or sitting by the fire, and you can just feel the hominess of it. It is very dreamy. It's very ethereal. It's kind of melancholy, all very much in that romantic vein. And the sense of it is really him drawing on. He has a fascination, particularly in this. I think you can see with the English poet Shelley. English, always a little bit of a fractious relationship between Yeats and England, but there is an ugliness going on here. Because just look at it. When you are old and gray, presumably this person is not now. So he is speculating about the future. When you are old and gray, you're just young and beautiful right now. When you are old and gray. So already, I'm not sure about this, because who really wants to be thought of, when you've had some knocks in your life and you're old and tired and you have this bags under your eyes and the hair is thinning and gray and terrible, nobody wants to be thought of in those ways. And full of sleep. When you are very old, you perhaps nod off an awful lot, nodding by the fire, but also full of sleep. Sleep could symbolically reference death, when death is bubbling up within you and about to take you, full of sleep. And nodding by the fire, take down this book. What book? The book he is writing by writing this poem, that he's going to include this poem in this book. So already he's setting up a relationship between this person and his work, this woman and Yeats's, or the poet's work, this book. And slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. Now, for those of you who have ever gotten a backhanded compliment, maybe this rings true. For those of you who haven't, maybe this just seems like, oh, well, yeah, okay. The soft look your eyes had. Yeah, okay, remembering me that. But again, this is suggesting that that soft look is gone now, is faded now. Remember when you had that soft look. And of their shadows deep is now, well, that's what is there now. That soft, pretty, youthful look is now just scarred with shadows and age. So it's a little harsh. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love, false or true? Recurrence of the word love in there. He loves recurrences. Recurrence of the word love make you think of, oh, well, this is about being loved and it's nice and all that. But then you start to think again and you say, oh, okay, how many loved your moments of glad grace? How many guys were you with when you were younger? How many men have fawned over you? How many men have you been with? And they're not even necessarily in it because of great love or devotion, because they could be infatuated with her with love, false or true. He's not distinguishing between them. He says, yeah, some of those guys might have loved you. Some of them might have been just using you. But there's so many of them. Who can keep track? Again, sort of backhanded compliments here. A little bit harsh, a little rude, certainly. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, looked beyond the physical, beyond the beauty, loved what was within, the pilgrim soul, the soul that was looking for something, the soul that was seeking something greater than the physical, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. Again, a backhanded compliment. When we were young, I want you to remember this. When you're old, think about how when we were young and I loved your changing face, i.e., I loved the face that was going to change. It would be changing into the face that you have now that you're old, or in the future when you're old. So I would love you still, but you didn't love me back. One man, always heroizing himself, glamorizing himself. I was the only one, only me. And loved the sorrows of your changing face. It is sweet, but it's a little on the edgy side here. It's sweet, but he's throwing some elbows. And bending down beside the glowing bars of the fire, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. Very poetic, very ethereal, a little melancholy, but also a little sadistic. Bending down, he's imagining this old woman, this young woman become old, and bending down beside the glowing bars. Bars could also be like jail bars holding you in. Maybe. Murmur a little sadly. He is actively wishing that she be a little sad right now. Murmur a little sadly how love fled. Love capitalized is probably personified in a kind of old pagan way, like Cupid, the figure that we all know from Valentine's Day, from Roman mythology, was often called love. How love fled, he is imagining himself as love personified. How love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. Well, to pace upon the mountains, again, sounds almost like, well, mythological figures. In Greece, the gods, in ancient Greece, the gods are living on a mountain. So they are eternally on Mount Olympus. So that is a kind of realm of the gods. And to hid your face amid a crowd of stars means that you are part of the heavens themselves, almost like a god yourself. So he has been dissolved into eternity. And eternity is outside of time. Time has been ravaging this woman in his mind in this poem. But he, whose evidence is just plucked off the shelf in this book, he is outside of time. He is part of art. He is art in its way at this point. And so she is dying at this stage of late life, witnessing how this love from long ago will outlast her. As she is facing her mortality, her physical death, he, the poet, the representative of art, lives forever outside of time as part of divinity, as part of the ideal, as part of whatever disorganized magisterial element there is in the world. There is something quite rude about this, quite hellish about this. It is a rewriting of a French poem from the 1500s that was frankly a little bit dirtier and more fun in certain ways. But here he's taking all that physicality, all of that sexuality, and throwing it aside, and he's putting it in this bifurcation of the world, of the universe, between the physical and the immaterial, and the ideal, the divine. That divine is characterized as art. It's not necessarily God. It's not necessarily a religious poem. He wasn't really a religious person in the conventional sense. He had deep hostilities towards churches in general and organized religion. But you can see that basic instinct to see the world in terms of the material, the common, the ordinary, and the immaterial, the extraordinary, the divine, and call that art. That's what he does again and again and again. This is a very early poem. It's in a very unique style of the early days of him. But even as he moves through the other work, the other stuff that he produces, as he goes through other styles, that same instinct is always there. That same instinct is within him. And he just finds different ways of expressing it.